The question that I was asked, what is Israel an apartheid state? You know, I'm terribly tempted to say yes, and then that's the end of my speech, because it's so self-evident that in a way we don't need to discuss it. Now, the two previous speakers have been wonderfully eloquent. They've given you really very much what I was going to say. I don't know that I have anything very new to add, except, of course, as the chairman said to you, I am the one person on the panel who is actually a Palestinian, who was ethnically cleansed in 1948 when we lost our home in West Jerusalem, which is where I was born. So I know an awful lot from a personal point of view about what the establishment of this state meant for me and hundreds of thousands of other Palestinians. Not only was I and my family ethnically cleansed from our home in 1948, we were never allowed back. That's the issue. That's really the issue. That Israel was allowed to get away with doing that, not just making sure that the population of Palestine left or was expelled, but ensuring that they never returned. And the fact that, as Ken so eloquently said, this disgraceful, appalling state of affairs was allowed to happen and to continue is down very much indeed to those powers in our world which could have pressured Israel and can still pressure it now to abide by the norms of international law and common decency and humanity. I was reading an article in Haaretz, the Israeli daily Haaretz, just today actually, and was struck by a piece about the forthcoming meeting between the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and the US President, President Obama, on the 5th of March. And this article was agonizing itself over the question of war on Iran. Was this something that the two leaders would discuss? How would they discuss it? And describing or commenting on the fact that they have a problem, because Obama doesn't like Netanyahu and Netanyahu can't stand Obama, but they both need each other. So in fact, the US president, it said, had no way of being able to really control the situation. Really? Really? The US, which funds and supports Israel in every single way, really? It has no weapons against Israel? Isn't that fantastic? All that the US president has to say to the Israeli prime minister is, if you attack Iran, all aid from the US to you, to your state, will stop. And you know what? Israel won't attack Iran. It is as simple as that. So really the problem we have, as you heard, is that we not only have to deal with this state, but we have to deal with the fact of cowardly states in our world which cannot, dare not take Israel and sort it out. And that's exactly what should be happening. Okay, is Israel an apartheid state? Well, I would have thought that just on the basis of Israel's treatment of the Palestinian people, that the answer is very clear. Because what you see the Israelis have managed to do is to behave towards the Palestinians as if they were a subhuman species. Now, it's a very clever thing to do, because you know very well you can maltreat people so long as you dehumanize them and make them into nothing. So the fact that you kill them, that you imprison them and so on, doesn't have the same impact because they're already subhuman. And if in addition to that, you as Israel have succeeded in converting the whole of the people of Gaza into terrorists, I mean, nobody, in fact, if you think about it, so many people, when they think about Gaza, immediately think of Hamas, and Hamas are terrorists, and the people therefore support Hamas, and therefore the people are terrorists. And therefore, the fact that they have white phosphorus bombs thrown on them, the fact that Israel between the end of 2008 and the beginning of 2009 killed 1,400, mostly civilians in Gaza. You know, it's one of those things that happen. Why? Because the people of Gaza are not fully human. That's the point. Now, if you think about that, if the Palestinians were regarded as fully human, would it be possible even to imagine that any outside agency would accept the behavior towards Palestinians that you can see every day going on in the West Bank, as Jenny Tonge described, as Ken described in Gaza, the way that people can't move about even their own pathetic cities because of checkpoints. The fact that women give birth at checkpoints because if their babies die, tough, that's good. That's another Palestinian gone. The fact that patients regularly cannot access treatment in Israel. Why? Because they are denied the permission to go to Israel. Everybody knows this. Think of it. How could that ever happen? Except if you thought that the people to whom this was happening are not really people like you and me. They are not people like us. So what? It doesn't matter. These things happen. Okay, so we heard about the bypass roads. You know about that. Only Israelis can use in the West Bank. You know about the wall. You also know that the cars in Israel, expanded Israel, including the occupied territories, are demarcated by the color of the number plate. If you have a yellow number plate on your car, you are an Israeli, or have that car, you've taken it, you've got it in Israel. And if you have a white number plate, you are an Arab from the territories, and you cannot get into Israel. There are things you cannot do. And on it goes. Now, the reason I think that Israel can get away with being an apartheid state is also one of perception. You see, the Israelis have been able to get away with this on the basis of the fact that apartheid as a system is not written into the law of the state. So in other words, you can't, unlike South Africa, where it was actually in the law, it was founded on law, it is not in Israel. That's a very, very good way of disguising what's really going on. Because if you say, and you will hear very much from people on the other side, you will hear this all the time. What do you mean apartheid? They've got members of parliament. Arabs in Israel can elect their own representatives. There are Arab members of the Knesset. What are you talking about, they say? Arab citizens of Israel have equal access to the law. All of that is correct. They can. But the important thing is that you have to actually look further. So the reality is that the way Israel does it, as I was saying, is that on the face of it, you cannot point to any law, most laws rather, and say, but in law it says an Arab and a non-Arab. But if you look closely, you will see that that is actually not true either. First of all, I would just want to make a few examples and then I will end this. First of all, the very definition of Israel as a Jewish state and a state for all the Jews of the world is a racist definition. As simple as that. A state is usually, as we understand it, a state made up of its citizens. It is not a state which is for a particular group of humanity. What kind of a definition is this of a state? Secondly, the law of return, which has already been mentioned, is a very good example of precisely this kind of thinking, this discriminatory thinking. The law of return says that any Jew residing anywhere has the right to immigrate to Israel and on arriving will attain Israeli citizenship. However, at the same time, that right is not extended to the inhabitants of that land who were expelled by the creation of the State of Israel. Now, why is that? You must ask, what's wrong with the people, the inhabitants, coming to their previous land where they lived, which was their homeland? What's wrong with it? What is wrong with it? It's underpinned by international law. There are UN resolutions about it. It's a natural right. Why does Israel object? Well, it's obvious. It objects because it is a Jewish state, i.e., it has to have a Jewish majority. Think about that. How can you imagine a state which stipulates that the majority of its inhabitants must be Muslim or Buddhist or cucumbers or whatever it is, and every effort is made to keep it like that? Quite clearly, therefore, you cannot let the inhabitants back. So that's the law of return. Now, who is a Jew? Who is a Jew? Now, here's a big problem. Because when the founding people of Israel laid out this vision of a state of the Jews, who are the Jews? What is the definition of a Jew? Is it somebody who practices the Jewish religion? What is it? Now, they have never been able to find an agreed position. At one time, at the beginning, they talked about a person born of a Jewish mother, or a person who had been converted according to the Orthodox system. That's it. Nobody else. Over time, when they saw that they were drying up the number of where they're going to get the people, they started to make it much more elastic. So now, anybody who has a Jewish parent or a Jewish grandparent is now Jewish. Not only that, amongst the million immigrants from Soviet
Okay, but you'll have the opportunity to correct them during the question time. All right, make sure that.
Among the billion immigrants from Russia, how many of you know that 40% of these people are not Jewish? They are not Jews. They go to Greek and Russian Orthodox churches in Israel. Okay, 40%. Not only that, but when they brought in the Ethiopian Jews, they brought in the Ethiopian Jews. They even fishing for Jews in Peru. They've gone to India. Anything. You know what the main purpose of it is? It's that they should be non-Arab. Non-Arab. You can be therefore any sort of person. You can call yourself a Jew as long as you're not an Arab. It's all right. And so. Just two more points. The question of the absentees. Now, if there is one system which should tell you everything there is that you need to know about the nature of the state, it's the question of the present absentees. Are people familiar with this term?
Yes, but
it's quite extraordinary. And I'm about to tell you what it is, and you obviously don't know.
I do know.
The present absentees are Palestinians who, at the time of the establishment of the State of Israel, were not in their normal place of residence. Now, they could have been people who had gone and fled because of the war, or they could be people who were not in their particular villages when the war happened, had to fled to relatives, let's say, nearby. These people were pronounced by the Israeli government as, quote, absentees, and it enabled the government to take their land and property. There is 250,000 such Palestinian absentees in Israel today. These are people who cannot get their land or their property back from the Israeli government because they are absentees. I want to end on the most important and significant aspect of apartheid in Israel, which should make it very clear to any doubters that this is an apartheid system, and that is the land question. I think people may know, many people may not, that in Israel, 93% of the land is held by the Jewish National Fund for Jews. It can never be sold or leased to non-Jews. As a result, the citizens of Israel who are Arabs cannot buy land in 93% of the country because they are not Jews. Now, if that isn't discrimination or apartheid, I really don't know what is. Jenny Tonge mentioned the question of marriage. You know that if an Arab citizen of Israel marries a person who is not Israeli, but the whole point is the person is an Arab, they are not allowed to live with their spouses. They should leave. They either can leave Israel or they can stay, but they cannot live with their spouses. I don't know what you call that. And finally, of course, there is the Nakba law. That is the law that is being passed in the Israeli Knesset, which says that the Palestinian and Arab citizens of Israel cannot commemorate the Nakba, that is the 1948 dispossession. They have to only celebrate Israeli independence. So, if anybody is in any doubt, as Jenny suggested, take a plane, don't even go to the West Bank, just go to Israel and just talk to people. You will see the amount of discrimination that the Arab citizens of Israel endure, not just them, but the Oriental Jews, and not just them, but the Ethiopians. Do you know that if an Ethiopian gives blood to the Israeli blood bank, people have objected because they don't want transfusion from an Ethiopian. They do not want to use that. So, in summary, I think it really, the issue that we need to talk about is not is Israel an apartheid state. It quite evidently is. It is a form of apartheid. It's not like South Africa identically. No, it's not. But it doesn't have to be. You can be an apartheid state without being a replica of South Africa. That's the point. Such an apartheid state must not be, does not deserve to be supported, or to have apologists for it, or to have people defend it. And I know that quite a few of my Jewish friends and people I've come across over the years, I live in Golders Green, by the way, what more do you want? Many of my Jewish friends have felt the need to defend Israel blindly. They really are so hysterical. They can't pause for a moment to think, is it true? Because such is their psychological dependence on the idea of Israel that they feel personally threatened. We have examples of that this evening. And really, my advice to people like that is you need to be treated. The state of Israel is not a nice place and you shouldn't be defending it.